Indie games have the capability to be something truly special. Games made with passion and no worries about corporate nonsense getting in the way. That's not to say every big budget game is a soulless cash grab, there's still passion there, but nowadays, with gaming budgets being increasingly more bloated, there's been a push to make every big game a forever game. Sometimes you'll have games that they want you to put hundreds, if not thousands of hours into it to justify the ever-increasing price tags, and yeah, I mean, I've got some forever games. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and Phantasy Star Online 2 have me hook, line, and sinker. But the problem is, many games miss the mark by filling it with a bunch of random busywork and carrot stick nonsense to keep the player coming back, while missing the idea that if you make your game fun to play, then people will keep playing it. Where I'm going with this is, NanoApostle is at most a 5-hour long game, but between my PC and Nintendo Switch, I've put about 40 hours into this game. There isn't 40 hours of content in this game, there's not even 20 hours of content. I've just put so much time into it because I keep playing the game again and again for the fun of it. It doesn't waste your time with filler nonsense, it knows the story it wants to tell, it tells it, and it gets out of the way. It's up to you to decide how much of it you wish to keep playing after the credits roll, and I think this game is truly a hidden gem. Our story begins with a young girl mortally wounded and not long for this world unless something's done. All we know is that her name is Lena, and she's being carried by a soldier named Horace, with the words, "I will get you out of here." We then see a little girl floating in a tube before waking up without her memories, and a weird glitchy spiky thing that's attached to her spine known as the Apostle. But given that our protagonist is like 6 years old, that's a bit of a complicated word to say, so we settle for the name Kuro. And then we're given our objective as a bioweapon. We will face off with other bioweapons in order to fulfill the ultimate objective of, I guess, a perfect bioweapon, or whatever the heck. I don't know, we'll figure it out as we go. But first, we need to get some testing and some practice in. The game throws us into a tutorial to explain the basics of combat, ranging from a light attack to dodging, to the parrying mechanic, to healing, to critical strikes, to using your gun, etc., etc. Now, me listing it off like that all sounds overwhelming, but the game does a pretty good job teaching you in a fairly natural way while also implementing red attacks, which are attacks that cannot be parried and instead need to be dodged. So we're already doing better than Wo Long and Lies of P. And after your tutorializing is done, you're given a boss fight against the non-lethal combat model. It's not difficult at all and can be bursted down in less than a minute if you really try, but it does a great job getting the player used to the game's mechanics and preparing them for what's to come. After the boss goes down, we discover an unknown memory log showing two soldiers speaking with one another about the dread of this war and the siege on the city of Palanak from these mysterious monsters. Most of these scenes will be from the point of view of Horace, a young soldier, and his interactions with his commanding officer Scythe while dealing with the unknown foe, which is basically Skynet but Asian. Actually, didn't they make a Terminator anime? Afterwards, we wake back up in the room we initially gained consciousness in and receive a warm welcome. Anyways, this is Winnie, the only other friendly face in the game and the original NanoApostle. Meanwhile, our young heroine is the 89th iteration, But of course, a nameless protagonist would make for a pretty hard to tell story, so Winnie gives her the name of Anita. This little hub world of ours is the datascape. I can't say for certain, but it seems like this place doesn't truly exist in the real world. We're simply inside our mind, more or less, and the test subjects only really leave their tubes to partake in battles to the death against one another. I'm not 100% sure on this though, so don't quote me on any of this. Meanwhile, Winnie is a triple amputee, incapable of surviving in the real world, and is only kept alive because her mind merged with the computer system of the Pioneer facility itself. Not exactly as an administrator, mind you, she doesn't have full control over the facility, but more like a liver or a kidney in the human body, where it's still important to keep around and stay alive. And after all the tutorials and dialogue, we're given our first module, as well as 2 locked data chips that require skill points to access. This is your main character building mechanic of the game, as these will allow Anita to be crafted however you like. The first module is obvious, as it's the only one you have at the start, and it's one of the modules with literally zero downside to having, outside of technically taking up a module slot, which it's not competing for anything anyway, so that's not even a downside. But another module you'll want to work towards is Biobarrier, as it provides a defense buff when you're healing, so the question is, how do you get skill points? Well, 2 ways. But first, time for a bit of lore. See, this game is more or less 6 chapters, and at the beginning of every chapter we get a data log where we can learn something about the world of NanoApostle. Our main thing here is energy perception, an unexplained phenomenon found in a few humans that cannot be mimicked by computers or passed down through reproduction. But while we learn this facility is ran by a group known as Pioneer, the rest is a massive question mark, such as what do they want to do in order to what are they even working towards here? I'm guessing some mechanical evolution of humanity or whatever the hell that means. We'll have to get more information as we go. See, we'll end up getting skill points thanks to us unlocking 2 types of training environments, the first of which is obstacle courses. The obstacle courses are timed runs to the finish line, usually acting as a sort of reflex challenge, while wanting you to make use of your moveset in slightly more creative ways, such as parrying bullets to stagger turrets because you can then grapple over to a staggered enemy as a way of traversal, and the other things as well. These are actually a lot of fun, and I wish there were more of them in the game, because unfortunately, as it stands, there's only actually 3 obstacle courses in the entire game. But they're enjoyable detours, and each training environment offers you up to 3 extra skill points you can snag, which will be helpful. The second type are the enemy rushes, which I'm less enthusiastic about. They're fine, but so much of this game's combat is at its best when you're squaring up with one big enemy and getting to use all your tools and combos against them while fighting a few trash mobs with pretty underwhelming designs is not as fun. It's not bad by any means, but these aren't the thing I replay the game for, and they last a lot longer than the obstacle courses despite offering the same level of rewards, and many of them more or less requiring upgrades from further on in the game than you can realistically beat without having a very long and tough time. But those side activities are just an extra way to earn some skill points, which will be helpful because our main objective is going to be battling against Pioneer's other bioweapons, the first of which being the Berserker. The Berserkers were the first soldiers that Pioneer would drop into battle. With no concern for any form of life, friend or foe, they weren't viable for fighting alongside other soldiers or bioweapons, but were great for sowing chaos and doing damage, especially since they were distinctly very resilient fighters and would have to be fully destroyed to truly be killed, or they'd keep fighting even with all their limbs removed from their body. But they're not very intelligent. They lack much in the way of tactical planning and adaptability, so a platoon of soldiers that are coordinated or a capable warrior could take them down as long as they kept a cool head and didn't get overwhelmed by the initial onslaught. And what does this all amount to? Well, a pretty fun first boss fight. A lot of the Berserker's attacks are just more relentless versions of the attacks seen from the non-lethal combat model, such as spins, shockwaves, lasers that must be dodged through, projectiles that need to be parried, etc. Now, dying can definitely feel demotivating against tough bosses, especially when they seem near unkillable at first, but keep at it for a little bit because even when you do die, you'll see a list of tasks you can do to unlock skill points. And you're able to work towards those and unlock many of these skill points even if you die in a battle, so throwing yourself at the boss will not only help you get better at learning it, but it'll also allow you to unlock a few extra skill points for more build variety so you can throw on more data chips to make your time easier. But draining his health to 0 doesn't mean the fight is over, as every major boss in the game has 2 health bars to indicate their second phase. The Berserker is one of the more straightforward phase 2s, not introducing any new attacks, but instead just increasing the intensity with combos that go on longer, damage after effects, and increased projectiles, demanding more parries from the player to truly stagger the boss. But while the boss seems bulky, he takes additional damage from infection bursts, encouraging the player to make use of their gun attacks to win, and parrying is a great way to raise his stagger meter super quickly. And for beating the boss, you're treated to a brutal but potentially very satisfying execution scene, depending on how much trouble this fight gave you. Yeah, this game's not for kids. Anyways, after the boss is slain, we decrypt another memory file following the story of the young soldier Horus, who's facing down these bioweapons in combat while his homeland is surrounded by these monsters. We're gonna have to learn more as we go, because the story is kind of only told to us in bits and pieces. We also see another soldier named Mike who gets killed with some slasher movie levels of comedic timing. I don't know why, but this scene always gets a bit of a chuckle out of me. It's morbid, but it's like Tarantino morbid. Returning back to the datascape, we're greeted by Winnie once again, happy to see us, but her body appears to be freaking out a bit. Apparently, she spent too much time on LimeWire or something. I don't know. But we also get a warning of our next major opponent, as well as a new module. These modules are free data chips Winnie gives us that offer some form of bonus that will always be helpful against their next boss fight. In this case, our slash attacks now have sword beams that have increased range and can stop projectiles, but with the drawback of our attack speed being slower. As you will see soon, that slower attack speed drawback is not the nerf the devs may think it is, because there is an easy way to get around it. We also get an increase to our maximum number of healing charges, which will be helpful because having 2 healing charges at the start of the game is the only thing that makes Berserker feel kind of difficult on a replay. Now that we've slain our first boss, we've got a bit more we can do around base. The first event we'll actually get is a scene with Winnie where we can choose to play a video game known as Xanalis. Seems like some old-timey retro space shooter game like Gradius. Or who knows, maybe it could be Polybius. I suppose that would fit this whole dystopian setting we got going on. Either way, Anita manages to beat Winnie, hooray! Then you get a really funny line from Kuro about how Winnie must suffer from a mental disability, which does not go well for him as she decides to lock in for round 2, although this time instead of against Anita, it's against Kuro. In between each chapter, there's going to be these nice little kind of slice of life scenes, but what purpose do they serve? Well, with each one complete, you actually receive 2 free skill points, which can be used to upgrade your skills without having to do any extra challenges, so they're nice to do. And speaking of skills, I picked up not only Pulse Slicer but also Executor Thread because this is basically just a flat damage buff as long as we don't heal. And even if we do heal, it goes back to being a damage buff after 12 seconds. We can also read up on some lore giving us information on the NanoApostle project, essentially a way to give nanomachines and their various powers to humans to expand their combat prowess in the military and potentially for other uses as well. But the project was seemingly halted after 56 bioweapons were created, although that's kind of a lie because Kuro and Anita are subject 89, so someone either has been fudging the numbers or maybe they're not counting failed attempts. I don't know. Actually, it's probably that they're not counting the failures. The last thing we unlock is a tutorial for aiming our gun. It's very basic and straightforward, and it's weird that we're unlocking it now, but it will be important for the next boss fight if you somehow beat Berserker by just whacking him to death, so I guess it's okay that they teach us this. Better now than never, I suppose. It's optional. Our next battle will take place against an opponent known as the Commander. Now, the Commander can be a much more dangerous opponent than Berserker, with her vastly increased mobility and far more numbers of red attacks, which means we can't parry them. We need to watch out for them in the forms of laser beams, bullets, and also grabs. But she also has chakrams that can be used to attack you as her main form of melee damage, and again, a very dangerous grab attack that leaves her open if you dodge it, but if she grabs you, you're going to get taking a lot of damage. The gun will be very helpful in this fight, as it allows you to not only hack some of her laser traps, turning them into a projectile that hit her instantly and stun her, but it can also be used to snipe her from across the arena when she's temporarily out of breath and having to recover. For the most part though, she's going to play fairly defensively in her first phase, as she puts up a shield and you need to destroy enough of her bits in order for her shield to go down. And when they're down, there's this little spawn timer that shows up on the bottom that tells you how much time you have left until the bits will come back. However, that does not apply when she enters phase 2. The cover in the arena is gone and so is her shield, as well as the arena now being surrounded by lasers. We also see that she has a human face, and combined with her far more feminine appearance, it seems she wasn't nearly as altered as something like, say, Berserker or upcoming monsters that we fight. But the question is, why exactly? Well, I can't say for certain, but going out of order in these data logs, it appears that there were some experiments from Pioneer to have bioweapons created through, well, reproduction, as well as genes they obtained and other information, and they found that genes obtained from invalids or transsexuals weren't beneficial as they were sterile. Now, if that's the case, it stands to reason that Commander's body was intentionally left relatively untouched compared to other bioweapons as, well, NanoApostle subjects. This would also explain why Anita's body is still completely human outside of, a nanomech being attached to her spine. Which definitely leads to an uncomfortable implication, but this game isn't exactly rainbows and sunshine with its subject matter, so who knows. We sadly don't get much information on the Commander. She's one of the least talked about bosses in the game, with very little to go off of other than her fighting style and some animations of her seeming to be scared, either of you or something else in this place. I can hazard a guess what that is, but that's a spoiler for an upcoming boss fight. She's an excellent boss fight, but she's oddly the least talked about opponent despite being the only one that still has a human face, which honestly makes her execution all the more disturbing. After she's killed, we're left with nothing but some robotic limbs and an uncomfortable silence. Then we decrypt our next memory file, which shows Horace spending time with his younger sister Lena. Hey, she looks kinda familiar. Well, we now have our motivation for Horace, as he wants to get his last surviving family member to safety and away from this conflict. Waking back up, we have a scene of coffee with Winnie, and we also learn that there's no taste here. Winnie's just been partaking in these seemingly meaningless activities to try and maintain her sanity, and Anita starts asking questions about the outside world and what life is like outside, and also, the desire of wanting to go there. This leads to an ominous scene with Kuro talking about Rule 0 being recognized, which, yeah, I'm sure this won't have any major future implications in the plot. Now, going into our next information log, we learn about why Pioneer is invading these random small cities and nations, as they're after individuals that have the energy perception trait, which really is just like sci-fi magic bullshit. We learn about some other nations and cities and everywhere that also have individuals, but, well, really that's about it. And we're also given another obstacle course side mission we can tackle, and yeah, it's fun. This one focuses more around proper positioning and lasers as opposed to being super quick, though unfortunately this obstacle course is really short, arguably even shorter than the first one. It has a higher par time than the first obstacle course, but honestly, it's one I've completed faster quite often. Now, going into my loadout some, for the next fight I decided to equip the Mass Converter skill, less so for its main effect and more for the passive bonus of increasing Anita's maximum HP by 20%. There's no lame incremental upgrades here, we're getting significant buffs from these loadouts. Then we head down to fight the boss, but we learn Winnie's been looking into our next opponent, and she discovers who it's going to be. It's a monster known as the Reaper, a brutal eliminator of sorts, but there's nothing we can really do about it right now, and we can't afford to worry when we have our own threat to deal with. And that's because our next battle will be against an opponent known as the Molter. This boss can kill you very quickly. But in all seriousness, this fight is a major positioning check that focuses heavily on hazards and making use of charged attacks, and more importantly, charged counterattacks from parrying the boss. Sadly, damaging him straight up isn't as easy as it should be, because this boss will armor up his body making him take no damage until the armor is destroyed, but as a trade-off, the Molter staggers whenever his armor is broken, on top of any other kinds of staggers that may take place. But I can't really say I like this boss fight very much. His music is pretty forgettable compared to other soundtracks in the game, and his fight, while far from bad, is definitely the one I enjoy the least, in large part thanks to its weird attack timings and area denial focus. Plus, it doesn't really seem like you should be able to parry his earthquakes, but you can, and that's honestly going to be how you get a lot of your damage in. Which, I don't know, that just screws with me. His second phase is where he cranks things up to 11, as he now has the capability of igniting any oil in the arena and just being deadly all in all. Or is he? You see, the Molter is one fight where I think phase 2 is considerably easier than phase 1, to the point that if I get here, I've basically won the fight. Though maybe it's not supposed to be as hard, as the Molters are more or less Pioneer's excavation and sabotage unit designed for tearing through the earth and undermining foundations and facilities instead of straight up fights. But even though his fire attacks look big and scary, they leave him open for much longer than his phase 1 attacks do, making it much easier to just wail on him. And honestly, with the right setups and stack infections, you can tear through phase 2 with just 2 cycles, possibly even 1 with the right loadout, but good luck being able to pull off something like that. The battle can be a pain in the ass, but his brutal execution can definitely give the player some much needed catharsis if they did struggle with this fight like I did on my first playthrough. Our memory this time around isn't really anything special. It's basically just a line that we got on Molter being an engineering unit, followed up by a brief update about a break in the Pioneer occupation, so we kind of see the plan to try and get Lena to safety. Returning home unfortunately doesn't show very encouraging results. Winnie's health is deteriorating fast, and after trying to give us the best chance she can against the Reaper, she ends up falling unconscious with only about a 62% chance of ever waking up again. We also get a note from her and some skill points, as well as a boost to our healing capacity. She's done what she can to help us, but sadly she's out of commission, and the datascape, our safe haven and hub world, have become dark and lonely, with the music changing to a much more ominous, atmospheric track instead of the one with a soft piano, and we're starting to realize just how in over our head we are against the Reaper, which may just be the last thing we ever see if we're not careful. We're all alone, and our next opponent is a monster designed specifically to kill other bioweapons, so we might just be up a creek without a paddle. You're really going to want to prepare as best you can for this fight, and I personally recommend equipping the skill Deconstructive Impact, as it provides a good damage boost, which will be beneficial because this is not a boss fight you want to be playing the long game against. We also get ourselves another data log for beating Molter, talking about the orders given to Pioneer to siege Palanak. They were hunting down people with energy perception, because there's that magic bullshit coming up again, and we now have to go face the thing that's designed very specifically to kill the undesirables. There's no more stalling we can really do, and we've prepared as best we can. It's time we have to face the bioweapon designed specifically to kill others. And that is the Reaper. Unlike the other bioweapons, it doesn't serve a specific purpose on the battlefield. It's simply here to tear apart the bodies of other bioweapons, fracture their minds, and get rid of them for being weak. And also, given that his blood is purple instead of red, I don't think this thing was ever human at all. This is a monster through and through, and a nightmare at that. The battle can definitely induce panic in the player with the dark arena, tons of projectiles, shadow orbs, shadow clones, and his unique gimmick being the fear gauge. Should it fill up, Anita will collapse to the ground and curl up into a ball, leaving her wide open for the boss to perform a grab attack, which doesn't just hit hard, but it also has a lifesteal effect to it. And the boss can also do this grab attack mid-battle, but it's very well telegraphed otherwise. Phase 1 of the battle can be very tough, so my advice is do not heal unless you drop below 50% HP. This is a long battle and rationing your healing will be necessary, and in most cases your healing restores you up to 100%, so save it until you drop below 50. But once you get his health low, he's going to drag you into the Shadow Realm. Here, we have an objective. We need to find his true body 3 times and destroy it, all while your fear gauge is filling up constantly and he's going to attack you with his clones. This could be difficult if you don't know the trick, since your movement is slowed, but honestly just keep spamming the dodge roll and keep a cool head. This lets you move faster and also gives you enough invincibility frames to usually dodge the attacks. And when you've destroyed the clone, the Reaper will be stunned for quite a long time, leaving him open to be torn into and possibly even take out the rest of his health bar. Now, getting into phase 2, Reaper now starts to look downright psychotic. Though, oddly, I'd find this phase considerably easier than his first. The arena expands and lights up a bit while he focuses more on his own attacks instead of creating clones and area denial, which makes it far easier to keep track of everything. And despite purple being an otherwise unused color in this game, you can still parry his bullets back at him, which do significant damage. This fight is going to be a challenge, but if you can make it to phase 2, you can beat him. He's lost his element of fear, so now he's just going for blind aggression, but he lacks the raw strength of Berserker. In fact, with good timing, you can actually get him into an infinite parry loop and beat him to death that way, without him even getting to show off any of his stronger attacks, which is pretty funny. Though, I don't do that here. But, assuming that we're not going for cheese strats, then he'll drag you back into the Nightmare realm one last time, in a much larger arena with far more aggressive clones. This is a desperation move, if anything, and it certainly is dangerous, but it's the last trick he has up his sleeve. Take it out, and you'll more or less be handed the final bits of his health bar on a platter. Overall, the fight's awesome, and it truly does nail the
good atmosphere.
And while his execution may not be as graphic since his blood is purple instead of red, it doesn't matter, it's still satisfying as hell to see. But do you really think you escaped the nightmare? Our next memory shows Horus and Lena trying to escape the war, but before they can truly get clear, they're bombarded by a mysterious flying octopus-looking aircraft. It seems that we're nearing the events of the game's opening, and we're going to see how the story ultimately comes to its conclusion sooner than you think. Waking up, well, we're back in the datascape, but it still seems to be very dark. I guess we should go try and check on Winnie. Thankfully, that's just inside Anita's head as she was trapped inside the Reaper's nightmare for longer than it may have seemed. Winnie was actually able to recover, but Anita's still going through it. But understandably, even after she recovers, Anita does have a breakdown. After all, she's been going through all of these terrible things at, 7 years old at most? That alone would be traumatic. But the only two things she's ever has to interact with are a robot attached to her spine and a triple amputee who's her only friend and she just saw die in front of her. To be perfectly honest, even though it's not the main focus of the game, this game's story does a better job showing how people deal with trauma than a lot of AAA games that try to handle this subject matter do. Thankfully, Winnie knows what it's like to go through this sort of pain and comforts Anita, giving us a very touching scene between the two. And honestly, sometimes a hug can go a very long way to help with things. Even if the situation's not great, knowing you're not alone can help a lot. We've got ourselves a bit of a cooldown period here. This is probably the most relaxed the hub world ever gets. Winnie has recovered, the hub world's gone back to a brighter state, and the music sounds peaceful and slightly encouraging. It really is the calm after the worst of a violent storm. Speaking with Winnie, we get a rough idea of who our next opponent will be, but unlike before, we're making sure she doesn't push herself too much, so we don't have a lot of information going in. Something we also get is the ability to hug Winnie now for the rest of the game. It's a bit silly, but I suppose I can appreciate a game with a dedicated hug button. The lore we get is pretty straightforward this time around. Pioneer were the ones behind the siege in Palanak, who'da thunk, and they captured some valuable materials, as well as one person with energy perception. 0 points for guessing who that is. There's also some additional lore here that talks about essentially grafting the energy perception trait onto an individual as part of the NanoApostle project without one in an attempt to, I guess, artificially create them. I don't know. Think of it like, I was gonna say an artificial stand, but if you're familiar with Blue Dragon, think of the false shadows. There you go. There's your fucking deep cut for the video. We also unlock another enemy cluster, which does nothing for me other than prove me a liar saying that Reaper was the only time purple showed up in the game. Anyways, to be honest, this gauntlet just sort of exists, but to talk about the lore a bit more, I think the artificial creation of NanoApostles probably should have been the last data log we unlocked because it feels a bit more plot significant than the last log, which, yeah, the last one's a very random detail, which I've already talked about, but I'll mention it again when it comes up. Oddly enough, there's actually a side mission that gives us a rematch with the non-lethal combat model, which feels even weaker than its first battle at the start of the game, not only because of our expanded arsenal, but also due to the combat model having only 2 attacks this time around that I've ever seen him use, while his first battle had 4. That's certainly a choice they made, and I wouldn't exactly say it's a good one, but okay, whatever. I'm fine enough with a cooldown boss after a pretty major story fight, so sure. More exciting is unlocking the final Obstacle Course Gamma. I really wish we had more of these because it honestly is a ton of fun and it throws all the mechanics at you, but in a different way than usual, though I like it. Unfortunately though, this is the last obstacle course in the game. I really wish we had more of these because I just think having a different way of using your moveset and engaging with it is enjoyable, and it's a nice way to keep things kind of interesting and entertaining. Plus, they're completely optional as well, so even if you didn't come here for that, you can skip them. All you're missing out on is a few skill points that really you're not hurting for skill points in this game, especially considering you can just refund data chips to get all the skill points back. Now, while the downtime was nice, we do still have another bioweapon that needs to be brought down. This is the Hunter. He stalks you like his prey and attacks from a distance. He'll be able to fire at you from range, either raining arrows down from above or targeting you directly, as well as having the capability to recover his stamina, essentially resetting his stagger gauge. On top of that, he can cover the arena in electric traps, which will stun you and leave you wide open to his deadly grab attack. But you can use your own gun to hack his traps, making them able to stun him for a prolonged period of time, allowing you to deal a lot of damage to him. It's a very good strategy. And in response, Phase 2 chooses to escalate the tension by creating 2 fissures in the arena and slightly camouflaging him from view, as well as making him invisible to radar, though that last part doesn't really affect the gameplay at all. The Hunter was a special covert ops bioweapon created by Pioneer capable of reconnaissance as well as assassination, not being detected by most forms of radar or thermal vision. Due to its green blood and abnormal body movements, one must question if the creature was ever human to begin with. It's a mysterious foe, though I don't think it hits quite the same as fights like Reaper, Commander, or even Berserker personally. Not a bad fight by any means, but I honestly, I don't know. I think the music in this fight's actually pretty good, and it's a decent fight, but it's treated like a stopgap between the Reaper and the next boss as the 2 most important fights in the game. He's just kinda the pack filler. But that's not necessarily terrible, it's just he's not gonna be standing out or winning anybody's favorite boss award. Even his execution's pretty lame, if I'm being honest. Our final memory of Horus shows Lena mortally wounded and bleeding out in his arms. Likely not very long left to live. Pioneer soldiers begin surrounding him, preparing to either capture or kill him, but thankfully, Safe survived the bombing and killed some of the Pioneer soldiers while drawing the fire of the rest away, giving Horus a chance to escape with Lena, as we see more or less the same scene that opened the very game. And we also know Safe was able to kill them because if you read one of the earlier data logs, it reports that 8 soldiers were killed. So, I'll let you guess who took them out. This is also the last memory of Horus, so whether they made it or not, well, we don't really know at this point. Returning back to the datascape, The plan to get Anita out of here into safety has more or less been set and finalized, though the big concern is that it's currently the middle of winter in what is essentially some northern Eurasian country. It's going to be super cold, so it'll be up to Kuro to manage Anita's body temperature. Thankfully, that's not a gameplay mechanic we need to worry about, just a story bit. However, Anita may be young, but she's not stupid, and unfortunately, she realizes that Winnie has no way to escape herself. This sucks, but Winnie acknowledges that her real body is missing most of her limbs. Even if she made it out, there'd be no life for her to truly live. She just wants to get Anita a chance at a better life, and we're given some really nice artwork during this scene. Speaking with Winnie, we're given access to her final data chip, as well as the maximum number of heals being boosted. I'm gonna say this right now, you want Rhythm of Venus. No ifs, ands, or buts. It may be a free data chip skill we get, but it's too good to pass up. But otherwise, don't just look at the skills, main effects, look at what passives they give you and what you can work in. Max HP boosts are always nice, but something like an additional shot charge is amazing. Absorb damage is no slouch either. Don't be afraid to spend a few minutes here making the world's most overpowered young child. It will pay off and it will be a lot of fun. We also get the last data log, which is kinda weird. Well, not exactly weird, but it's weird that this is the last one we unlock. It's the genetic database record, which just amounts to genes and their data, as well as bioweapons now being used for reproductive purposes, and how invalids and those who have undergone sex changes aren't viable due to them being sterilized. Fair enough, I suppose, but it's weird that it's the last data log we get in the game, and as for reproduction, you're telling me Pioneer was looking at the likes of Reaper and decided, yep, this is what peak performance looks like, set them up with Commander, boys. We also unlock the final enemy gauntlet, which isn't exactly what I play the game for, but I can appreciate the new enemies here, such as the Spectre robots and the hyper-lethal combat model. Out of all the gauntlets, this one is the most engaging of the bunch. Speaking with Winnie again after her gift, she lets us know that her final opponent will be a NanoApostle, much like ourselves. Anita is Subject 89, while this is going to be Subject 90. Are better in every way. So get ready for a tough fight, folks. This one is definitely not going to be easy. As we head off to our final battle, we see Winnie for one last time cosplaying as the Emperor of Mankind, determined to shut down Pioneer systems and get Anita to safety, determined to save at least one life. Our final battle is against NanoApostle Kurazan, and it's a surprisingly straightforward battle. Kurazan only has a single health bar we need to drain. Though calling him straightforward would honestly be a lie, as he has plenty of powerful explosive attacks, sword combos, mines he can lay down, which you can hack, shockwaves that can come from his sword combos, daggers, shrapnel, a long-range dash attack, a 3-shot grappling hook that also acts as a grab attack, the whole 9 yards. Really, he's kind of using just about everything the other bosses had outside of Reaper's Nightmare Realm and Malter's armor. On top of that, this boss is immune to your infection shots when he's not just idling there. You can only shoot him when he's either mid-attack or in a recovery state. And he has a counter stance that does a ton of damage. He's a tough fight to be sure. And this is to say nothing about the fact that he also has an infection meter much like we do, and he can sap health from us if the bar fills up. Thankfully, it doesn't do serious chunk damage against us, just slightly more than a regular attack, or we might be sunk. Though, you definitely don't want this boss healing if you can help it. But with enough punishment, he will go down, and we can truly begin our great escape to get out of this facility and see the outside world. Finally, an elevator ride. We can relax and get out of here. Oh. I hope you didn't think it'd be that easy. Kurazan is actually much the same fight as before, just now with increased aggression, a smaller arena, 4 grappling hooks he can chain together instead of just 3, and at the end of his dash attacks, he'll unleash a Judgment Cut. Kurazan is a NanoApostle much like us, a peak performance bioweapon unmatched by anything other than another NanoApostle. But let's talk about something else. A major theme of NanoApostle, the game, not the designation, is sacrifice for the sake of a loved one. Horus sacrificed for Lena, Winnie sacrificed for Anita, even Safe was willing to sacrifice his very life to try and get Horus and Lena to safety. Everyone has someone they care about and wish for them to live a better life. I don't think it's a controversial take unless an individual lives a truly miserable and lonely existence to think otherwise. And people will go to immeasurable lengths for the safety and betterment of a loved one, even to their own detriment sometimes. It's what makes us who we are as people. We're not isolation animals, we are social and bond-oriented as a species. It's possible to live alone, but humans are designed to live with at least one other person, be it a biological family or a found family. And if you truly care about them, you'll go beyond your perceived limits and do everything you can to keep them safe. But with enough punishment, Kurazan goes down. And then gets right back up, because surprise motherfucker, we've got a 3rd health bar. Thankfully, this one is much smaller than the first 2, but the fight isn't over. Kurazan will now more or less make up combos on the fly, but if you've made it this far, you've probably hit the flow state. Kick his ass and finish strong. Well, that was really violent. Anyways, Anita and Kuro begin to escape, but unfortunately, Pioneer's Rule Zero overrides his programming for a short time, electrocuting Anita and causing lots of serious internal damage in the process. Thankfully, it doesn't take too long for him to regain his reason, but now her life is in critical danger, and we're getting a parallel. You've likely pieced it together, but Kuro was Horus the whole time, or what was left of him. Unfortunately, it seems Pioneer isn't too keen on letting us escape. But it seems we aren't the only NanoApostle regaining their memories, because it seems like Kurazan also regained his memories much like us, and it's none other than Scythe, who wants to protect us one last time. Do you think he got his memories back when we snapped his neck, or when he threw him down the elevator shaft? I know it plays the scene earlier, but I'm kind of wondering how much of that is Protocol Zero. Anyways, all that's left is for Horus to somehow, someway, get Anita to safety. Horace kept his promise to get his little sister to safety, sacrificing his life and very existence to do so. Unfortunately, her memories likely won't survive, and she may not remember he ever existed in the first place. But now she at least has a chance at a better life instead of being used as some sort of weapon. All that's left at this point is simply hope. And that was NanoApostle. I love this game so much. I enjoyed it a ton when it first came out, but after putting the better part of 40 hours into it and playing the game again and again, it's in my top 20 favorite games of all time, maybe even top 10. Not every game needs to be some 100-hour behemoth. There's a serious value to a game that knows exactly what it wants to be, sets out to accomplish that goal, then gets the hell out when it's done. Its playtime may be short. Hell, this run took me longer to script than it did to actually play, but if a game is fun, people will come back. Some of my favorite games are things like Kirby Air Riders or Ys Origins. Neither game is very long, but they're so fun, I've played them time and time again. Now, I can say one thing, roughly 3 hours max, that's short enough you could honestly probably do a Steam refund speedrun of the game if you really wanted to. And I can't say this will be a game for everyone, but I think you can tell if you'd enjoy this game or not just by watching this video. And if even one person decided to give it a try, I'd consider that a win. But even if that's not the case, I still thank you for taking your time to listen to me talk about a game I love. And on that note, I thank you all for watching. If you'd like to see more content of varying quality, be it another long-form video like this, a boss ranking, or maybe one of my worst difficulty spikes videos, then consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you all next time. Until then, take care.